Today, we're going to review a strategy called John 1010. Now, this is a strategy that was developed by my friend Brian from the HolyRollr Craps channel here on YouTube. His link is in the description below. I met up with him in Las Vegas at Craps for the Cure the other weekend, and we went over all of the data that I'm about to share with you today. Here's how John 1010 is set up. All our bets are going to be working at all times, and we're going to set it up right away, right at the first roll. There's a $500 lay bet. That's going to cost $12 in VIG, and our VIG is going to be paid up front today. There's a $75 hard 10 bet, $25 on the 5, $60 each on the 6 and 8, and we follow that up with a $35 field bet. Now, what's really interesting about this strategy is the win conditions. So check this out. If a 2 snake eyes is thrown, the player is going to win $70. A 3 or 4, they're going to win $35. 5 is going to break even, and that's because the $25 place bet on the 5 is going to pay $35, but you're also going to lose the field. 6 is going to win $35. 7, the most frequent number that's being thrown in craps, is only going to lose $5, and that's crazy because you got $767 on the table today. The 8 and the 9 both win $35. The 10 is a little interesting. If it's an easy 10, you're going to lose $540. But if it's a hard 10, you win $60. So just 2 out of 36 combinations there that are going to cost you $540. 11 is going to win $35, and the 12 is going to be a nice roll. It pays out $105, and that's because our 12 is paying triple on the field today. Let's see how it does on a couple rolls and see what happens. Point is going to be a 4. That's going to be a win on the field, a win of $35. Shooter hits the point. That's another field win, another $35. All our bets are working all the time here. Field wins within 11. Snake eyes, that's going to pay double on the field. That's $70. And there's a come out 7. So all our bets were working. So we're going to lose all those bets, but we're going to win $250 on the lay bet. Shooter sets a new point of 9, center field 9. That's going to win $35. There's the 6. We lose the field, but we win $70 on the 6. Five hits again, so we're going to break even. And the shooter hits the point of 9. That's another $35 in the rack. The point is off, but our bets are working. Oh, and there's Boxcars 12, $105 won on the field. And the shooter throws a hard 10. That means we're going to lose $500 on our lay bet, but we're going to win $525 on the hard 10. We're also going to win $35 on the field. That's going to be a net of $60. So that was a pretty good session, but they're not always that good. And the way that I figure this out is I run 100,000 bots to play this strategy. They're going to play over 10 shooters, and we're going to see what happens. So let's dive into the simulation report and see what's actually going to happen when you play this in the long run. So this is a simulation report for John 1010. This is what you get when you order a custom simulation from me. Or if you join my think tank community, you'll be able to get this report and about 50 others with all the strategies that I've simulated on this channel so far. Here's the data that we're going to be looking at today. We have 100,000 bots playing John 1010. They played for 10 hands per bot. That gives us 1 million hands total, 8.5 million throws of the dice. And that's because each shooter hangs onto the dice on average about 8.5 times. First, we're going to look at the house edge. The 100,000 bots bet just over $1.9 billion. They won $837 million and lost, or the casino won $870 million. That is a house take of $58 million and an overall house edge of 3.04%. Now, we're going to get into exactly why that is when we look at some of the bets that we were making a little later on in the video. Now, this is a moderate house edge. It's not the best that you can get, but it's certainly not the worst. And there are a lot of strategies that have a worse house edge. Now, what's really more important than the house edge is how much the bots actually won and lost. And we're going to start off by looking at how they did over that million hands. And if you look at this, 65.8% of the bots were winners when you look at a hand basis. 32% lost money on individual hands. And it gets even more interesting when we look at how much they won and lost on the individual hands. The median won and lost for any hand is $53. And what that means is that 50% of the bots won more than $53 and 50% won less than 53 or lost money. The average is negative, it's negative 58, and that's being pulled down by some of these really big losers that we're going to look at in a little bit. But look at this here, 52% won a modest amount of money. And I think that's one of the advantages of this strategy is that it does have this kind of like moderate tendency. Now, you do have some fat tails where these bots really lost a lot of money. And you don't see that same behavior on the other side where you could win a lot of money. But in general, the bulk of the distribution is centered around zero. Even look at this middle 50%. It's just between a loss of $271 to a win of $158. And even if you looked at just the middle 90%, that's only $828 against a $416 win. Now, remember, that's also with $767 on the table at any given time. Now, this is an interesting chart because it tells you when the bots won, how much on average did they win, or when they lost, how much on average did they lose. So the average win given a win is $161. Average loss given a loss is $480. Now, what this is telling us is that when the bots were winning, they weren't winning as much as they would lose when they lost. And that's what leads to those more frequent wins, but they're being paid for by the few bots that actually lost, and when they lost pretty big. I mentioned that our bots were not just playing a single hand. What they were doing is playing over longer sessions of 10 hands. Now we start to see that flip. You only have 1 out of every 3 bots that ended the sessions as a winner, and 2 out of 3 that ended their sessions as a loser, meaning they lost any amount of money whatsoever. Here's what the distribution looks like. The worst bot lost almost $8,000. The best one won almost $4,777. The median is $487. Average is $585. And look at the shape of this. So it's a pretty nice bell curve, just shifted over by that, $585. And essentially that is the effect of the house edge coming in, taking this distribution and shifting it over towards losses. You can also really see the effect of the imbalance between the amounts won when you win and the amounts lost when you lose. So look at the middle 50%, $1,353 lost, but only $284 won when they won. So you can also see this in the middle 90%. Look at this, almost $2,800 lost up to $1,280 or $1,300 won. So more than twice the ratio of losses when they lose to wins when they win. Now let's talk about bankroll. So how much is this going to cost you if you actually want to play? So the way that I look at this is that I use a statistic called out-of-pocket outlay. So every time the bots have to make a bet, if they have to make that bet out of their own pocket, I count that as an outlay. So $767 is the minimum outlay. That's what it takes to first get set up on this strategy and to be able to play it in a real casino. The 25th percentile, 1,179. Median, 50% over, 50% under is 1,740. 75% never needed more than about $2,500. Maximum any bots needed was $8,812. That is an outlier. And you can really see that in the shape. 18% were right down in that low number. And you can see just how this This really trails off once you're getting up to that, 95th percentile, which is right about here at 3,800. On an individual hand, look at this 64.9, almost 65% of the bots never needed more than $767. So it is a strategy where more often than not, you're going to do well. But every once in a while, you're going to get whacked and it's going to be pretty bad. And that's what happens over here. We're going to show a little bit later how the bots recovered and things like that. So that's going to be pretty cool. On an hourly basis, if we're assuming 80 throws per hour, which I think it might be a little bit fast, 2422, which cost 75% of the bots didn't need more than $2,400 to be able to play this strategy. Here's the return on outlay. People ask me all the time, is this a strategy where I'm likely to win a lot of money? Well, 10% were able to double their outlay, but only 2.3% were able to triple. 3 out of 1,000 were able to win 4x their outlay, and very few or none were able to 5 or 10 times their outlay. So I don't think that this is a strategy where you're going to win a lot of money. This is definitely a stay at the table strategy. And this is the stat that really tells you that. So for every $100 that the bots bought in for, they made almost $1,000 in total bets. And that's because they're recycling so much of their money. There's a lot of wins and losses, and they're winning and losing that money, and they're recycling it. Table conditions. This is a strategy that really doesn't perform differently based on whether it's a hot, choppy, or cold table. Playing experience. This is another interesting one with this strategy. How often does any throw have some kind of win? This one has 100%. At least one of those bets that was on the table is going to win on every single roll. The loss frequency, almost 64%. Same number for hedge frequency. And that's so hedging, this is how often does a bet win and a bet lose at the same time. Volatility, 0.18. This is a very smooth ride. That's the nature of this strategy. There's not a lot of swings up and down. It's a pretty smooth ride. Profit retention. So this is how often the bots were able to hang on to their winnings or they gave back their winnings. So 9.6, almost 10%, almost 1 out of 10 was able to get profitable and stay profitable for their entire session. 4.3%, unfortunately, they started off down and stayed down for their entire session. 24.1%, they were down and then they recovered, and we're going to go into more detail next. And 61.8% gave back money. So they started up higher and then they went lower and they gave back, and just a few percent mixed. So let's go into this recovered number, 24,116 bots. So this is what happened to those bots. The least that any bot gave back was just $1. On average, just about $400, or the median, I should say, is just about $400. The maximum was 2,165. And you can actually see that here if we zoom in a little bit. This is bot 66,900. Gave back, or I keep saying gave back. I actually mean they earned back. So they recovered $2,165. They lost a few times, won a couple here, but then just had this amazing trend and ended up right here. So they were down 2,165, and they were able to recover the whole thing and then end up with just a little bit of a win. 1 out of 100,000. So that's not typical results. That just happens. That's the most that ever happened. Here's another one. Big loss, big recovery, a little bit of a dip here. This one tried a couple times and just went deeper, but finally made it by the end. Before that 10th shooter, they were able to just about break even. Now we can look at what happened with profit given back. So profit given back, this is a bigger number, 61,827 bots. Least they gave back was $1, median $318, maximum was $2,812, and this is what that bot did. So that's bought 25,500. Look at this. They lost right in the beginning and then just went crazy up. We're all the way up here. If they'd stopped there, where they would have been up, $2,800, and then just gave it all back. So those are some of the notable sessions. Here's the bet detail. I told you we're going to look at the house edge on individual bets. So this is interesting. Those 3.9% is what we came out with for the place 5. The theoretical is 4%. The 6 and 8 are the lower house edge bets. Lay bet is 2.4%. That's because we're paying the VIG up front. Hard 10 really whacks you at 11%, and that's really the one that most pulls the average up and gets it up into that over 3% range. Even the field, we're paying triple on the 12, so it's just 2.8% that came out here. Again, these are not theoretical numbers. These are what the bots actually paid in terms of house edge throughout those 100,000 sessions, 8.5 million rolls. Which bets won and lost the most? Lay 10. Certainly, it's a $500 bet. Won the most and lost the most. But some of the other ones, field bet is another one. It's only, what did we do? $35 on the field. But it accounts for a lot of the losses and a lot of the wins, and that's because it's being replaced on every single bet. It's the only single roll bet that we're playing in this strategy, and it's turning over pretty fast, so it certainly can lead to a lot of wins and losses. Last thing I have for you today is throws to profit. And again, I mentioned it a little bit earlier in the video, but this is not a strategy where if your shooter is if you have a really hot shooter and they hang onto the dice for a long time, that it's guaranteed to pay off. Now, this black line is the survival rate, and what that's telling you is how many shooters are actually able to hang onto the dice that long. And you can see it plummets on the x-axis. We have the throw number, y-axis we have that percent. So 100% of them are going to make it to their second throw, right? By definition, you set a point, and then the worst you could do is 7 out with a 0.7 out. So we have that, and then it goes down. But look at the blue areas. That's how often the bots were staying in profit. And that's pretty low. It's pretty low because they're pretty aggressive in terms of they're not waiting for points or anything like that. They're just aggressively, making all of these bets, having all the bets working at all the time. And they never kind of break out and get to that point where even 50% or 100 or 90% are guaranteed a win, as you see in some of the other strategies. So that's all I have for you today. If you got something out of this video, I really hope that you will give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Still a pretty new channel and trying to give you some of the best craps information and crap statistics that I possibly can. So thank you for your support. If you also want to support the channel, you can go to shop.dicedata.info. I put in a whole bunch of new shirts and some pretty funny ones, I think. So let me know your favorites in the comments below. And definitely check out Brian's video on the same topic. I'm going to link to his existing video. And then as soon as he uploads it, I'm going to link to the video that we made together while we were meeting up in Vegas at Casino Quest. Thanks for watching and good luck at the tables.